Vetra 9 was a quiet planet at the edge of the galaxy. Its skies were always silver, and the ground was dry and cracked. The people who lived there were not humans. They were called Hazari, tall, smooth-skinned beings with 4 fingers and eyes that glowed like soft glass. The Hazari were not warriors. They were builders, thinkers, and problem-solvers. Their cities floated above the ground using silent magnetic lifts. Their buildings were shaped like trees and lit by soft light. They believed that machines should be helpful, silent, and always perfect. One day, a group of young Hazari engineers was digging near the edge of an old crash site. The site was hundreds of years old. It was a strange place. Machines there didn't match Hazari technology. As they dug deeper, their tools hit something hard, a large metal box, heavy and sealed shut. On its side were strange letters in an old Earth language, MG34. They pulled it out and brought it to their lab. Tal, the lead engineer, was calm and curious. He had studied human history for many years. Tal knew that Earth's people were strange. They made machines that could travel between stars, but also made simple tools that lasted for centuries. When Tal saw the metal box, he felt something unusual, something deep and cold. Inside the box, carefully packed in soft padding, was a long, strange machine made of steel. It had no blinking lights or talking systems. It was quiet, pure, elegant. It was made with purpose. Every part looked like it belonged. There was also a folded paper inside the box. It was yellow with age, but one message could still be read. This is the MG34, a machine too perfect for war. Lock it away. Tal showed the machine to the others. They scanned it. They studied its parts. The machine didn't use energy cells or plasma cores. It was mechanical, simple, yet powerful. It was from old Earth, likely from a time before humans had even left their planet. One young Hazari named Kor whispered, "Why would humans stop using something so perfect?" Tal didn't answer. He didn't know. That night, Tal sat alone. In the lab, the MG34 rested on the table in front of him. He couldn't stop looking at it. Even though it was a tool from a forgotten time, it felt different. Not dangerous, not broken, just complete. Tal opened the historical records from the human archives. He searched for the MG34. Some documents showed images of it being used in ancient wars. Others showed engineers admiring its smooth design. But the notes always ended the same way: withdrawn from use. Too efficient, too perfect for war. There were no details, no explanation. It was as if Earth had locked away the truth. Tal leaned back and thought deeply. In Hazari culture, perfection was the goal. Every tool, every design, every machine, they all aimed to be flawless. So why would humans fear a perfect machine? He decided to send a message to Earth. To Earth Archive Center, "I am Tal, engineer of Vetra 9. We have discovered a preserved MG34 from ancient Earth. Why was it removed from history? Why was it labeled too perfect? Please respond." He waited. Days passed. No answer. Tal sent the message again. Still nothing. Finally, after a full cycle of the moon, a reply came, not from the archive, but from an old human station on Mars. The message was short and simple. From Miller, "You want to know why the MG34 was locked away? I will tell you. But not in writing. Come see me in person." Tal read the message 3 times. It was unusual. Humans rarely asked for face-to-face meetings anymore. Almost everything was done by message or simulation. But this man Miller wanted to talk. Tal made his decision. He packed the MG34 carefully, placed it in a secure travel case, and boarded a ship for Mars. His team tried to stop him. "Why go yourself?" Kor asked. "Because sometimes," Tal said, "a machine shows you the future, but to understand it, you must go back to the past." The journey to Mars was quiet. Tal sat near the window of the ship, holding the metal case that carried the MG34. The stars outside blinked slowly as the ship moved through the black space. Tal thought about the human called Miller. The message he had sent was short but strong. "Come see me in person." That was rare. Most humans sent voice messages or digital recordings. But Miller had asked for something different, something personal. Tal did not understand why. Not yet. When the ship landed on Mars, Tal stepped out and looked around. The sky was red, and the land was covered in soft red dust. Wind moved slowly, and there was silence everywhere. A small rover came to meet him. It had a screen with a face on it, an old man with gray hair and clear eyes. The man on the screen spoke calmly. "You must be Tal," he said. "Yes," Tal replied. "And you are Miller?" The rover gave a soft beep. "Yes, follow me. I will take you to my home." Tal followed the rover across the dry Martian ground. After some time, they reached a small building made of old metal and stone. It looked simple, not like the clean designs of the Hesari. Inside, the air was warm. Books lined the walls. Real books made of paper. Old machines rested on tables. Some were broken, others were still running. The room smelled like dust and oil. Miller sat in a chair near the window. He was very old, his skin soft and his hands thin. But his eyes were sharp. "You brought it with you," Miller said, pointing at the case. Tal nodded and placed the case on the table. Miller opened it and looked at the MG34. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he reached out and touched the metal gently. "This," he whispered, "is a memory." Tal sat across from him, waiting. "I studied your records," Tal said. "The MG34 was removed from use. But the reason was never explained. Only the words, too perfect for war. I came to learn why." Miller leaned back and looked at Tal. "Before I explain, I want to show you something." He walked to a shelf and took down a small metal box. It had buttons and a glass screen. He pressed a few buttons, and a projection lit up the air. It showed old black and white images, humans in uniforms, carrying MG34s. They were walking through forests, fields, and towns. The machine moved smoothly in their hands. Too smoothly. "You see," Miller said, "this was more than just a machine. It worked too well. It didn't shake. It didn't jam. It didn't fail. It was exact, predictable, reliable." Tal nodded slowly. "Isn't that what all machines should be?" "Yes," Miller said, "but not in war. Not always." He turned off the projection and looked at Tal carefully. "Humans are emotional beings. We think, we pause, we question. In war, that hesitation can save a life, or it can stop a mistake. But when a tool is too perfect, it removes that hesitation. It becomes automatic, mechanical." Tal thought for a moment. So the problem was not the machine. The problem was what it did to the people who used it? Miller smiled. "Exactly. The MG34 didn't just fire. It made people stop thinking. It turned decisions into reflexes. That's why Earth stopped using it." Tal leaned back in his chair. This idea was new to him. In Hesari culture, perfection was always the goal. A perfect tool was the highest achievement. But this human was saying the opposite. That perfection could be dangerous. Miller stood up and walked over to another table. He picked up a small hammer. "This," he said, "is an old tool. Simple. You have to hold it, aim it, and swing it. It takes skill and effort. If you make a mistake, you feel it in your hand." Then he pointed at the MG34. "But this, it takes no effort. No thought. It removes the human from the process. And when you remove the human, what is left?" Tal looked at the machine. It was quiet. Cold. Still perfect. "Earth didn't fear the MG34 because it was strong," Miller said. "They feared it because it was too easy to use. It made war feel clean, safe, controlled. But war is never those things. And no machine should make it feel that way. Tal stood up and walked over to the window. Outside, the red desert stretched into the distance. He felt the weight of the truth Miller had shared. "I think I understand now," Tal said. The MG34 wasn't just a machine. It was a mirror. It showed something about the people who used it. Miller nodded. "And that's why we locked it away." There was silence in the room. Then Tal turned to Miller and asked, "Why did you answer my message? Others ignored it." Miller smiled gently. "Because I lived through a time when machines were getting too perfect. I saw what it did to people. And I believe the galaxy needs to remember not just how to build, but when to stop." Tal nodded. He looked again at the MG34. For the first time, he didn't see it as just a machine. He saw it as a question. And the answer was not in how it worked, but in how it made people feel. Weeks passed after the council took the fake MG34 to Central Command. Tal waited for news. He expected questions, maybe even doubt. But nothing came. Then one day, a short message arrived from the council. "The machine has been delivered to our research unit. Initial tests show potential. Further analysis underway." Tal read the words slowly. His plan had worked. They believed the replica was real. But their interest in further analysis reminded him that the danger was still alive. He looked at the wall behind the display room where the real MG34 was hidden. Quiet, safe, but not forgotten. At the same time, something new was growing inside Tal's lab. He had started private lessons with a small group of young engineers, Rel, Core, and others who had shown deep interest in human ideas. He called it the Awareness Circle. They didn't just study machines now. They studied meaning. Each meeting began with the same question: what is the purpose behind the design? Tal stood before them and spoke simply. Machines are not the enemy, but we must ask, what do they change inside us? What do they take away? He showed them recordings of Miller's workshop. He shared the story of the farming bot, the surgical tool, and the MG34. One evening, Rel said, "You taught us how to think, not just build. And I think that's more important." Tal smiled. That was his hope, but not everyone agreed with his views. One of the researchers, a senior engineer named Varn, had noticed changes in the lab. He saw Tal teaching in secret. He grew suspicious of the missing data in the MG34's files. Varn sent a report to the council. "Engineer, Tal may have withheld full schematics of the MG34. His actions should be reviewed." Tal was called for questioning. He stood before the council's silver-screened communication panel. The voices of the 5 elders came through like distant echoes. "You submitted incomplete designs." One voice said, "You made an exact replica, but gave us a flawed tool." Another added, "Tal did not deny it. I did it to protect us," he replied. "The MG34 is a machine too perfect for its purpose. It removes thinking. It replaces pause with action. Earth hid it for a reason. I believe we must do the same." There was a long silence. Finally, a third voice spoke. "Your actions were not approved. You will no longer lead the research center." Tal stepped down quietly. He returned to the lab that evening, not as a leader, but as a teacher. His students welcomed him with warm eyes. "Even if I don't lead the center," Tal said, "I can still guide those who want to learn." Rel spoke. "For them all, you already are our guide." The awareness circle continued, quietly, without council permission. They built small models of tools from Earth's history, simple ones: hammers, windmills, water filters. Machines that required the user to stay involved, to feel, to choose. They called it design with pause. Tal also wrote messages to other planets. Some Hazari colonies were far from Vetronine and not fully controlled by the council. He shared his journal, The Pause Before the Machine, with students and engineers across the galaxy. Slowly, Messages started returning. From the moon of Yenra, a young engineer wrote, "Your journal changed how I build. Now I ask, what am I removing before I create?" From a station near the sun of LN4, a teacher said, "We added your stories to our student guide." They asked more questions than ever before. Tal realized something. Even without power, he had influence. The truth was spreading, not like fire but like seeds in the wind. Back at Central Command, the council continued testing the fake MG34. They were confused by its failure to operate perfectly. They blamed age, decay, or missing pieces, but they never asked the most important question: why would humans lock it away at all? The council focused only on how, never on why. This was the difference Tal had learned from Earth. And this was the lesson he wanted to protect. One day, Rel brought Tal a small device she had built. It was a simple cutting tool used for shaping metal. "I added something new," she said. Tal looked closer. There was a small button near the handle. "What does it do?" Rel smiled. "Before the tool starts, it asks, 'Are you sure?' If you press yes, it works. If you press no, it stops." Tal smiled. A pause. "Yes," Rel said. "A small one. But maybe important." Tal nodded. "That's where it begins." As the sun set over the floating city of Vetra 9, Tal stood at the edge of the skywalk once more. He watched clouds drift over the glowing towers. The world had not changed overnight, but it was beginning to shift. Machines were still being built. The council still followed their own goals. But in quiet corners of labs and learning halls, questions were being asked. And Tal knew one question, asked by the right mind, could change everything. Behind the wall, the MG34 remained silent. Not lost, not erased, just waiting. Waiting until minds were wise enough to look at it and understand. Tal's ship lifted from the red sands of Mars and rose into the sky. He sat inside, staring at the black metal case that carried the MG34. His thoughts were still full of the things Miller had shown him. He remembered the soft tone in Miller's voice as he said, "Sometimes the best way to protect the future is to let some tools become history." Tal had learned something important. The MG34 wasn't just a machine, it was a message. And now he was taking that message back to VETRA-9. When Tal arrived at the Hisari research station, his team was waiting. Kor and the others rushed forward. "Did you find the answer?" Kor asked, eyes full of curiosity. Tal nodded slowly. "Yes, but it's not simple." They gathered in the main hall. The MG34 sat on a wide table under a soft light. Around it were holograms of its structure, reports from Earth's archives, and the recording of Miller's final words. Tal stood in front of his team. "This machine," he began, "is perfect. In its function, it never fails, it is exact. But humans locked it away, not because it was broken, but because it worked too well." The others looked at each other in confusion. Tal continued. "Humans realize that when a machine removes all thought from a task, it becomes dangerous. The MG34 allowed people to act without pause, without question. It made them stop thinking. And when you stop thinking, someone else starts thinking for you." Kor stepped forward. "But isn't it good when a machine is reliable?" "Yes," Tal said, "but not when it removes responsibility." The MG34 made its users feel like they were part of a machine, not individuals making choices. That is why Earth decided to bury it, to make sure people remembered that thinking is more important than function. A quiet moment passed through the room. The MG34, sitting silently, seemed even more mysterious now. Later that day, Tal received a message from the Hisari High Council. They had reviewed his report and seen the scans. The message was short. "The MG34 is a rare artifact. We request its full schematics for reproduction and possible use in defense units. Please deliver immediately. Tal froze. He stared at the message, reading it again. They wanted to rebuild the MG34. After everything he had learned? He walked outside into the soft wind of Vetronine. The sun was low, and the clouds above moved slowly. Tal thought about Miller's words, about the farming bots, about the surgical tools, about what happens when machines do too much, too perfectly. That evening, Tal sat alone in the lab, staring at the digital schematics of the MG34. Every part was exact. Every system had already been copied into the Hessari system by his assistants. He had a choice. He could send the complete plans, and the council would make hundreds of copies. They would place them in defense stations, teach cadets to use them, maybe even design newer versions sleeker, faster. Or he could stop it. Tal looked at the tool on the table. A piece of human history. A piece of human fear. He took a deep breath. Then, he carefully deleted several key pieces of the schematic. Just a few changes, enough to make the machine look complete, but stop it from working correctly. He saved the file and sent it to the council with a message. The design has been damaged over time. This is the most accurate version we can provide. The next morning, Tal called a private meeting with a small group of young Hessari engineers. He showed them the MG34 and told them what Miller had told him. Tools are meant to help, Tal said. But if a tool removes your mind, your pause, your ability to choose, then it is no longer helping. It is replacing you. The young engineers listened closely. One of them, a student named Rel, raised her hand. So what should we do? Tal, forget machines like this? Tal smiled gently. No, we study them. We learn from them. But we do not build them again. We place them in museums, not factories. We tell their stories, not copy their shapes. Later, Tal placed the MG34 in a clear display case inside the research center. A small plaque was added beneath it. The MG34, a machine too perfect for war. A reminder that wisdom must guide even the smartest design. Visitors from other Hessari cities came to see it. Some were surprised by its simple appearance. Others were amazed by its smooth design. But all left with a new question in their hearts. Should every perfect tool be used? Or are some tools meant to teach us when to stop? Tal walked through the quiet halls of the research center that night, the lights low and soft. He stopped once, more in front of the MG34. Its surface reflected the gentle glow. He spoke softly, as if Miller could still hear him. You were right. Some tools don't belong in the future. But their lessons do. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving the machine where it belonged, not in hands but in memory. Tal stood at the edge of the research center's skywalk, watching the floating city lights of Vetronine below. The stars above were calm, but his mind was not. His decision to send an incomplete version of the MG34's schematics still echoed. In his thoughts, the council had accepted the file, but something about their silence worried him. He was right to worry. The next morning, a message arrived from the Hessari High Council Security Division. It was direct and formal. Engineer Tal, your recent report has been reviewed. A special transport unit will arrive in 2 rotations to collect the MG34 for testing at Central Command. Be prepared. Tal frowned. Central Command was not a research station. It was a military site hidden and rarely spoken of. Tal walked into the central lab where Kor, Rel, and the other young engineers were organizing tools. They had just begun building a small display room around the MG34's protective glass case. They want the weapon, Tal said firmly. Everyone turned to him. The council? Kor asked. Tal nodded. They're sending a transport unit to take it. But why now? Rel asked. They already received the design files. Tal looked down. Maybe they don't trust the file I sent. Or maybe they want more than just design. They want to feel the real thing, test it. Copy its function directly. The room became quiet. Tal could see worry on their faces. Later that evening, Tal sent a message to Miller. The council is taking the MG34. I tried to protect its design, but they still want the machine. What should I do now? Hours passed without a reply. Tal sat beside the display case, thinking deeply. The MG34 had not moved. It remained still and perfect, untouched inside its transparent shell. But its presence was changing things, changing minds. He remembered Miller's words again. If a machine removes thought, it becomes dangerous. Tal stood up and made his decision. The next day, Tal called a private meeting with Rel and 3 others. He looked at each of them carefully. The MG34 is not just a historical tool, Tal said. It is a test. If we give it to the wrong hands, it will be used to build systems that remove choice, remove thinking. And we will become the ones who allowed it. Rel nodded slowly. What are you planning? Tal took a deep breath. I'm not going to let them take it. The others looked at each other. You mean hide it? Kor asked. No, Tal said. We will give them something else. Tal and his team worked late into the night. In a locked workshop below the main hall, they built a perfect replica of the MG34, same weight, same size, same shine. But the inside was different. Its systems were made from a mixture of old parts and incomplete designs. It would look the same on the outside, but would never perform the way the real one did. At the same time, Tal moved the real MG34 to a hidden compartment inside the wall of the display room. Only he and Rel knew where it was. When the replica was ready, Tal placed it in the display case. To the eye, it was exactly the same. We're not lying, Tal said softly. We're protecting the truth. 2 days later, the council's transport unit arrived. The craft was tall and quiet, shaped like a silver leaf. 2 officials stepped out dressed in gray robes, their faces unreadable. We have come for the historical object, one of them said. Tal led them into the display room. The MG34 replica rested in its case, with the same plaque beneath it, a machine too perfect for war. The official scanned it, took notes, and packed it into a sealed container. They thanked Tal and left without further question. As the ship disappeared into the clouds, Tal let out a quiet breath. They think they have it, Rel said beside him, but they don't understand it, Tal replied. And maybe that's the better truth. That night, Tal received a new message, this time from Miller. I heard what you did. You're learning fast. Just remember, hiding a tool is only part of the answer. The bigger work is teaching others why it should stay hidden. Tal nodded to himself as he read the message. Miller was right. One day, someone else might find the MG34 again. And if they didn't understand its story, the cycle would repeat. The real work wasn't just protecting the machine, it was passing on the lesson. Over the next few days, Tal started a new project. He and his team created a digital journal, a collection of messages, recordings, and images. In it, Tal explained everything he had learned from Miller. He spoke of tools that became too perfect, systems that became too easy, and how that ease could lead to silence in thinking, silence in choice. They named the journal The Pause Before the Machine. Tal sent it to universities, research stations, and training centers across the Hessari colonies. He didn't demand they stop using machines. He only asked them to ask one question. What does this machine remove from me? And if the answer was thinking, then they had to stop. Or at least pause. The MG34 remained hidden, resting quietly behind a wall, covered by protective metal. It was not destroyed. It was not forgotten. But it was where it belonged for now. Tal looked at the wall and whispered to himself. This time, the machine did not win. The red sun of Mars was rising outside the window, painting the desert with soft gold light. Inside the small shelter, Tal sat quietly beside the MG34. The human, Miller, poured warm tea into a metal cup and handed it to Tal. "You look like you're still thinking," Miller said with a small smile. Tal nodded. "I'm trying to understand what you said yesterday. That too much perfection can be a problem. In Hazari design, we are trained to remove all errors. A perfect machine is seen as a success." Miller sipped his tea slowly. "That's not wrong, Tal, but sometimes the goal of the machine matters more than its design. Let me show you more." Miller walked to another shelf in the room. He picked up a small, smooth object. It was made of silver and had delicate arms and fingers. "This is a surgical tool," he said. "It was designed to perform medical operations faster and more accurately than any human." Tal looked at the tool with interest. "That seems like a good thing." "It was," Miller agreed. "At first, it saved many lives. But soon, hospitals started using it for everything. Doctors stopped learning, stopped practicing. When the tool made a mistake, no one knew how to fix it. People started trusting the tool more than their own mind." Tal frowned. "So the tool became a replacement for skill." "Exactly," Miller said. "Perfection took away responsibility." He put the tool back and picked up another object. It was a small farming drone. "This one," Miller said, "was used to grow crops. It could scan soil, adjust water levels, and plant thousands of seeds in 1 hour. Soon, farms everywhere used it." Tal nodded. "That must have helped your people." "Yes, for a time," Miller replied. "But the drone grew food so fast that it changed the balance. Markets failed. Small farmers lost their jobs. The land was overused. We had too much of one thing and not enough of others." Tal was quiet. He was beginning to see a pattern. Miller turned back to him. "The MG34 is part of that same pattern. A tool so perfect that it didn't leave space for people to think, pause, or even doubt." Tal stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the quiet red land. "In our culture," he said, "we design machines to be smooth, silent, and exact. We believe that is the best way." Miller joined him. "There's nothing wrong with doing your best, Tal, but perfection should have a purpose. And more importantly, it should never remove the human." Tal turned to him. "But the MG34 is a tool made by humans for humans. So why would it remove them?" Miller gave a long, slow breath. "Because it did everything so well that people stopped thinking while using it. They let the machine take over the action. It became like a reflex, like blinking. You don't think about it, you just do it." Miller picked up the MG34 again, carefully, like it was something fragile. He placed it on the table and pointed to its design. "Look at it, Tal. No wasted parts. Every piece is in the right place. No vibration, no delay. Once it starts working, it does exactly what it was made to do, without mistake." Tal stared at the machine. He had scanned it 100 times. He had studied its parts. He knew how each spring, each lever, and each gear worked. And yes, everything about it was smooth and perfect. "But if it is so perfect," Tal asked softly, "why not use it to protect life? Use it for training, for history?" Miller smiled a little. "That was the first idea. People said it should be used in training. But the more it was used, the more people copied its design. Some made new versions, faster, bigger. Then came automated copies. And before long, no one asked why anymore. They only asked how many." Tal felt a strange pressure in his chest. "So it became more than a tool. It became a system," Miller said. "And a system without questions is dangerous." That night, Tal could not sleep. He sat beside the MG34 and stared at its polished steel body. He thought about all the other machines Miller had shown him, the surgical tool, the farming drone, the mining bots. All of them were examples of machines that had done their job too well. Each one had removed a part of the human process: thinking, feeling, balancing. They made life easier, yes, but they also made people forget their place in the design. Tal finally understood something very important. Perfection can be useful, but too much perfection can remove wisdom. And wisdom, Tal realized, was what made a machine truly safe. The next morning, Tal walked into Miller's workshop with a small recording device. "I want to ask you one last question," he said. Miller nodded. "Go ahead. Why did Earth lock away the MG34 instead of just updating it or changing the design?" Miller looked directly at him. "Because sometimes the best way to protect the future is to let some tools become history." Tal recorded those words, and in that moment he knew this wasn't just about one machine. It was about a lesson that had to be shared, one that even his own people, the Hesari, had never learned. The hidden room behind Tal's lab remained untouched for months. The real MG34 stayed locked in its metal case, surrounded by soft lights and silence. Tal came there sometimes not to study it, but to sit beside it. One evening, Tal brought a small chair, placed it near the machine, and just sat quietly, not to question it, not to fear it, but to listen. The machine, of course, said nothing. Yet in its stillness, Tal felt something powerful. Not the sound of war, but the weight of what war once was. The world outside moved forward. The council continued its research, unaware that their replica MG34 was not truly human-made. They tried different energy sources. They wrote long reports. But the machine never worked as they hoped. Eventually, they lost interest. It was labeled a historical curiosity and placed in the central archive. The news made Tal smile. The danger was over for now, but Tal's mission had only just begun. In the quiet city of Vectra 9, the awareness circle grew. Students from other research centers began joining. Some came from far colonies. Some were even from different species, other beings who had also once misunderstood the true meaning of machines. Together, they started a new project, the Living Archive. It was not a collection of weapons or tools. Instead, it held stories. Stories of Earth, stories of pause, stories of what was lost when machines replaced the mind, and what was found when the mind returned. Each story was placed with a small model, just like Tal had done with the MG34. The models were built by hand, carefully, with mistakes allowed, because mistakes taught more than perfection. One day, Tal received a message from Earth. It came from a small university on the old continent of Europe. The message was simple: "We read your paper on the MG34. We had forgotten this lesson. Thank you for reminding us." Tal sat in silence for a long time after reading that. The world where the machine had first been born, the world that once feared its own creation, was now listening again. That felt like healing. Meanwhile, the council faced a new kind of problem. More young engineers started refusing assignments that required fast design without deeper thinking. Some questioned why they had to rebuild ancient weapons at all. Some even walked away from the council's labs and joined the awareness circle. The council tried to stop it, calling Tal's movement anti-progress. But they were too late. The seed had grown into a tree, and its roots were already deep. Rel came to Tal one day, holding a small wooden box. Inside it was a new kind of learning tool, half machine, half journal. "It teaches design," she explained. "But it also asks questions." Tal flipped the pages. On one it said, "Before you build, ask, who will use this? What will it replace? What feeling will it remove?" "Is that feeling important?" Tal smiled. "This is better than any machine I've built," Rel laughed. "It's a slow tool, but that's the point." In time, Tal was invited to speak at the Grand Hall of Knowledge, a place once reserved only for the council's elite. He stood before thousands of listeners. No slides, No machines behind him. Just words. He told the story of the MG34, not as a weapon, but as a mirror. A mirror that showed what happens when technology forgets humanity. The machine was perfect, he said. That's why it was dangerous. Not because of what it did, but because of how easily it did it. He paused, and because it made the user stop asking questions. Silence filled the hall. Then, slowly, one by one, the crowd stood. They did not clap, they simply stood. That was louder than any applause. Many years later, Tile grew old. He spent his final days in the same lab, now turned into a learning home for students from across the galaxy. The MG34 stayed in its secret room, not as a weapon, but as a symbol. Sometimes, new students would ask, "Why do you keep it?" Tal would say, "Because it reminds us that silence can be louder than action, and understanding is stronger than invention." Before he passed, Tal gave Rel one final task. "Bury it," he said softly, "but not to hide it. Bury it like a seed." The MG34 was placed inside a memory vault, deep below the living archive. It was not marked as a weapon. It was marked as the machine that taught us to think. Above it, Rel placed a stone tablet with Tal's words. "Some machines do not fail, they succeed too well." That is when we must ask, what do we become when the machine becomes perfect? Generations passed. People forgot the sound of the MG34, but they remembered its lesson. And in quiet classrooms, across many planets, young builders still paused before they built. Still asked why, before how. And in those quiet moments, the MG34 lived on, not in fear, not in war, but in wisdom.